everybody, this is Margie Meacham, and welcome back to the Learning to Go Brain Matters podcast. With me today is Anna McGrath, and I'd love to tell you a little bit about her. I've been working with Anna for more than a year. She is the founder of a company called WonderWorks, and she founded it in 2003 because she wanted to support leaders who understood that fulfillment comes from a combination of a lot of different aspects in life, that creating a healthy working environment is critical, not just to the happiness and engagement of the individuals in that organization, but truly to the success and sustainability of the business. Her focus is on supporting organizations to embody conscious leadership skills and effectively distribute decision-making throughout the organization. And to do that, she teaches her clients how to use various self-organizing systems and practices, including holacracy. Her major influences include whole-body transformational practices, self-organizing principles, and polarity thinking skills. So Anna, welcome. And what do you mean by conscious leadership?
Yeah, thanks, Margie. Yeah, so for me, I kind of have debated the use of the term because it can sound, it can sound a little bit arrogant. The word conscious can cause all sorts of ripples in people's minds. But the way I look at conscious leadership is literally, how do you start off with awareness? Like really creating a deeper level of awareness within each individual and within the whole group. And then how do you take that awareness and put it into action? So how does that awareness show up in your decision making? And that to me is, so as I think about conscious, I think about awareness in action. And so conscious leadership is literally us really being open, willing, and committed to learning together. And I also think that in an organization, leadership is everyone, like every single person within the organization is a leader because they lead the specific role that they fulfill. So for me, it's awareness in action for everyone within an organization.
Okay, so let's talk about that a little bit. And let's talk specifically about learning, because as you know, our audience is full of learning professionals. So you're probably already, with your opening statement, now they're thinking, I wonder what kind of challenges that creates. So what kind of learning challenges have you seen with your work?
Yeah, it's a great question. Well, what I think about is when we start talking about consciousness and then, with the goal of creating change, but ultimately really creating transformation. So when you talk about the actual learning challenges, these things don't happen overnight. So what we do is we really focus on being able to support individuals, teams, and organizations with what I would call simple practices. And so you can teach a simple practice in a 90-minute session or, in whatever modality that you're looking to do that, whether it's virtual or in person. But I think one of the challenges is it really is a combination of simple practices that are used over time that really start to create organizations and individuals to transform. So ultimately, the learning challenge underneath that is, are people committed to the long term and not just the short term from how do we measure the results after 90 minutes of training? So yes, there are certain measures, but really it's about more of that embedding skills into an organization, which show up over the long term. So I think for me, the challenge there is, how do you truly get the leaders who have that level of commitment to the learning journey?
Okay, so then it sounds to me like that not every business is really at the right moment in their development to take full advantage of conscious leadership if they're not thinking in terms of the long haul and looking ahead at how they really embed this in their culture. So is there a particular profile or type of business or industry that is a good fit for conscious leadership?
Yeah, well, maybe I'll answer it actually in the opposite direction, and then I'll answer exactly what you asked. One of the things I look at is if people are of the mindset of how do we exit from our business? You hear that a lot. What's the exit strategy? So if somebody's got, say, a 1 to 3 year or even 4-year exit strategy, normally what they're committed to within that period of time is not how do we create conscious leadership within our organization. There are exceptions to that rule. I just want to make that clear, because what organizations and industries that really are the types that want these types of trainings are those that are led by people that really have had whatever life experience, that they know that consciousness is what's actually truly going to infuse their organization to be creative, to be innovative, to communicate in a way that they can really face reality. They really, kind of have these authentic relationships so that work can get done faster, more productively, more creatively. So for us, it's actually about, rather than the industry, it's actually the kind of DNA of the individual leaders that say, actually, this is how I live my life. I want the people around me to also be on this same journey. So that's does that make sense?
Oh, yeah. And you know what? It reminds me a lot of the workshops that I do, specifically with instructional designers, because I didn't really think about it that way, but they're learning how the brain works and how to become conscious leaders within their area of expertise by committing to being much more aware of how they themselves learn and then carrying that over to the rest of their organization. So that brings me to another question is it possible for someone within an organization that might not be completely infused with this idea to be themselves a committed leader, and they can do this just within their team and get some good results?
Yeah, it's a great question. What I find is that I look at the continuum of where are people on the journey. So if we think about, there's a part of there's a group of people who are kind of happy with the status quo. They're going on their lives, nothing bad or wrong about what they're doing, but they're not on a journey to consciousness. But once you jump on the continuum, it doesn't matter whether you're on day 5. I kind of like to jokingly, refer to somebody who's just had an experience and who's like, yes, this is where I want to go. And generally speaking, those people then want their team to be on the journey with them. I would say I was one of those people a number of years ago. I can remember, kind of going back to my team. I'd had my kind of wake-up calls and then sharing skills with them. And so it definitely, you can have a team, you can have a division, you can have a whole organization, or you can have one person at any role within the organization who wants to individually go on that journey, whether their team or whether their organization is really aligned to that. So we like to create different ways to say, how do you actually support people where they're at so that they can get to the next stage of their journey?
Okay. And you mentioned obstacles. So what are some of the biggest obstacles to being successful with your work?
Yeah, I think this is there's kind of a number of different thoughts that I have here. But to me, it's a little bit like anything. We've all committed to something in our lives. That could be an exercise plan. It could be a diet. It could be writing a book. It doesn't matter what it is. And when you make one of those big commitments, so in this situation, it could be creating, to live your life with conscious leadership skills, to kind of live your life authentically. What normally happens is after a period of time where you're practicing, something happens that creates you to kind of question. You might get scared. Something happens that wasn't the outcome that you wanted. Maybe you haven't lost the weight. Maybe you didn't, write the book, whatever the thing might be. And that fear can then get you to question, does this make sense? So at that moment, you're either going to kind of face what your fear is and actually recommit to the practices that you've selected, or you might become more cynical and then might start to say, oh, well, that doesn't work. That's, negative things happen even when you're on this journey. And then you kind of, abandon it. So I think the obstacles, as I would say, are natural life experiences that can actually get us to revert to kind of our old troublesome ways of being. And so really being able to have a community around you becomes, I think, one of the most supportive things about when those obstacles emerge. Because now others can say, yes, but, you're just scared right now. That's not a big deal. Get back on the wagon, as it were, and actually, recommit to your practices. So I think that to me is the biggest obstacle, is when people get scared.
And that makes me think about something that quite a bit of us are talking about right now, which is the power of social learning. And really, what you've just described is a very specific example of that going through any kind of change is just so much more effective when you're doing it with others than trying to do it on your own. You're unlikely to all be in the doldrums at the same time. So there's always somebody there to pick you up. So I guess that would be the argument for doing this within your team, not just trying to go it alone. Is that, am I getting you there? Okay.
Yeah, right? You are actually. I must admit, I did a 2-year deep dive program with the Hendricks Institute, and therefore you had a community of learners with you. So within an organization, it's perfect if it's your team or a division or the whole organization, it's great. But yeah, social learning to me, I think, is the big accelerator.
Okay, and now we could talk probably for another hour about conscious leadership. But I also want to get to another big part of your business and what you offer, which is self-organizing systems. And can you tell us a little bit about what you mean by that and what that looks like in an organization?
Yes, definitely. So self-organizing systems really are about people being fully engaged and being able to have agency, be able to make decisions in their roles. And if you think about a hierarchy where, decisions go up, they get made, they come down, you take action, you follow the policies, procedures, etc., from those on high. With self-organizing, and there's another enormous continuum of fully self-organizing to just starting on the journey towards self-organizing. And we work with both ends of that spectrum. For me, the way it connects to conscious leadership is I had been working with, organizations for a number of years, maybe about 8 years. And I would see them really kind of waking up, loving what they're doing, wanting to have more and more opportunity to take on decision making. And those people would bump into the hierarchy of the organization. So that's when I got really focused on how do you actually have a system and structure that aligns to conscious leadership? And because the piece of really learning and growing is it's impossible to truly learn and grow unless you make decisions. If you're actually following others' decisions, your learning journey is kind of cramped, it's put in a box. Whereas if you start to make decisions about your work, you get to make great ones and celebrate, ones that aren't so good and go, oh, hold on a second, I've learned something there, I won't be doing that again. So for me, self-organizing is a way to truly unleash the power, the creativity, and the genius of those within the organization.
Yeah, so I could see how one really develops into the other and how they both complement each other. So I imagine you often end up providing both programs to your clients.
Yes, well, generally a person will come in one door or the other. Like they really want to get people to take more responsibility and to, not have to make all the decisions themselves. So they come through that self-organizing door. But you can't actually give out decision-making authority unless people are aware. You want people to be open, willing, committed to learning, and aware of themselves, aware of kind of interpersonal awareness. Because if you give a lot of authority to somebody and they haven't got that level of awareness, then things can get ugly pretty fast. And so it is a both and. And then others come through the conscious leadership door, and as you say, they bump into the hierarchical piece.
Okay, so two doors, you end up at the same transformative place in the end.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so speaking of transformation, let's say that you had the ability to wave a magic wand and make a change in every organization in the world. What's that one thing that you would change?
Yeah, it's funny because I asked this question or something like it of people when I'm interviewing them, and now that it's actually turned in my direction, it's narrowing down to one thing. So I think the thing I would say is ultimately practices that reduce fear in an organization, because fear is a crippling emotion if it's not dealt with, if it's not just kind of faced and walked through. And where I think the actual practice that I would say if every organization were really great at giving and receiving feedback, I think that to me is such a transformative skill. So if everyone at work gives and receives feedback, the organization, everyone in it and the organization is going to learn, is going to grow. And with leaders, often they get promoted into positions of authority and people will start getting scared to give them feedback. And without feedback, we just can't evolve. So that to me, I think is, if I could wave a magic wand, I would say that every organization really having a commitment to feedback in every direction. So there were no sacred cows, as it were.
Right. And let's talk about feedback for a minute. I'm going to get into one of my pet peeves, and I think I've shared this to you just in casual conversation, is that too often in business organizations, which has been primarily my experience, someone says, I've got feedback for you. It is a painful experience. It's almost universally meant, even though if you look feedback up in the dictionary, it's a neutral event. When someone says I have feedback, it's rarely positive. It's usually you're doing something wrong. I didn't like this, and can be quite damaging to the relationship and to and doesn't get you the results you're hoping for. So when you talk about feedback, what's your definition?
Yes, so it's a great question. So firstly, I would say when I think about feedback, I think about positive feedback, which would be appreciation. And I think feedback for improvement, which would be, so the way, I'm not going to actually give you a definition, but I'm going to tell you my kind of thought behind it. Feedback to me is a gift because it does take courage to share it. And often what I experience with giving feedback is not, I'm going to share this with you because I want you to do it a different way. It's, I'm sharing this with you, and it might be actually giving you more of a window into me. And maybe there's some learning experience that I have by sharing the feedback. Like if I'm saying, I think that the article that you wrote was a little bit too direct and blunt. Well, maybe that's actually feedback to myself to go, I need to be a little bit more direct. So it's more of a conversation that I share feedback. The person captures it in their hand. They look at it, they see if there's anything there for them, and they incorporate it if they think it's useful. As opposed to when feedback is shared from either a place of power, you must do this, that's not feedback, or whether it's shared from a place of feeling like you haven't got power, like, well, if I could just get this piece of information to you, but I don't think you're really listening. There's not peers communicating with each other. So to me, my idea of feedback is being authentic about what my experience of this other person is, so that that might be useful for them. But not that I know better and that I have some way of magically transforming them, but that we're in it together and we're supporting each other, so that if I know someone's got my back, then why wouldn't I want to listen to them? If I think feedback is an attack, then I'm in a pretty challenging situation, because the minute I put a wall up to receiving feedback, I'm basically saying I'm not going to grow.
Yeah, thank you. That's one of the best. I'd say ideally that's what feedback should be. I agree with you. So polish up that magic wand, because I think that would make a tremendous change in the world, probably beyond business as well. So this is the question that I ask everyone at the end of an interview, and that is, what are you most excited about right now in your work?
Well, firstly, I'm really excited because we're jumping into this collaboration with you on Learning Binge. And because, as you say, you can't transform the world unless you get out there, more and more. And you've got such brilliant collaborative partners who are sharing all sorts of talents and skills. So I'm excited to be jumping into this new medium, or this new opportunity to really share learning in a very kind of bite-sized way, so people can jump on the journey and learn from a lot of great people. I'll have the opportunity to also jump on the platform and learn from some great people. So for me, that's really exciting, because the goal here is how do I continually learn, and how do I share what I think my talents are with the world, so that I live a meaningful life and live my purpose. And that's what I want others to do, is live a meaningful life and live their purpose.
That's right. And to do that, you have to learn. So I am really excited too that you're a part of Learning Binge, and everyone will be able to find the link. It's simple, LearningToGo.info, in the write-up along with this podcast. And Anna, how does someone get in touch with you if they want to continue the conversation about conscious leadership and organizational structure?
I would go to our website, which is WonderWorksConsulting.com, or contact me direct at Anna at Y, that's the letter Y, WonderWorks.com.
Okay, everybody, you've been listening to the founder of WonderWorks, Anna McGrath, who is also a founding member of Learning Binge. And it's been a pleasure talking with you, Anna. Thank you for giving us your time today.
Thanks, Margie. Bye.